Hey guys, Chris here with the Good Old Gamer. So there's been something that's been bugging me for a really long time. I've even spoken to other YouTubers out there, and the same exact thing actually bothers them as well. And it's because, simply put, I can't wrap my head around this. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And that's something that I want to discuss with you guys here today. Why do people go out of their way to protect corporations and make excuses for them to gouge their own customers, which is them themselves? And I simply don't understand it. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, this is not a planned video. I was just reading this article over here on Techpowerup, which is basically just going over everything that we talked about in the last video from videocards.com. And I was just scrolling through the comment section. And of course, the first bunch of comments are very similar to my own opinion that I had in my video. Now, as to not give this commenter a lot of credit and a lot of hate, I'm going to go ahead and blur their name out. Please do not harass this person. They are entitled to their own opinion and the way that they feel about things. However, I simply just don't understand it, and that's the reason why I wanted to make this video. Maybe one of you guys could explain this to me. First off, he's responding to all the people that have a bit of an issue with the new RTX 2060. Somebody said, you're getting ripped off. That's an opinion, not merit-based fact, which I will disprove here in just a minute. Yes, even your 2070 was, basically saying it was overpriced for yesteryear's performance, which that's another thing that I want to talk about. I finally figured out why people disvalue older performance, and we'll talk about that towards the end here. But anyway, also an opinion, not based on merit. Yes, I paid a premium, but I got a card which performs 50 to 60% better than its previous generation counterpart, which I traded up from. So I'm assuming he went from a 1070 up to a 2070. Of course, we're just reading parts of this, so we have to interpret a little bit. That is an improvement and certainly not yesteryear's performance. Well, you could technically get 2070 performance last generation, so yeah, once again, not true. It is not a positive for Turing that the price is equal to Pascal, but it is a positive that there has been a performance improvement. Anyone explaining it like that is doing it just to justify a bad deal. No, anyone explaining it that way appreciates the advancements and performance increase. $400 for a high-end card, meaning it's the best the company can do, something like the R9 290, which wasn't the best that they could do, but it was damn close to it, for the record, is understandable. High-end cards haven't been $400 in almost 10 years. Your point is factless. Well, first off, the R9 290, when did this come out? November 5th, 2013. So that's about 5 years ago. So not 10 years ago, basically 5 years ago. And granted, this wasn't the absolute top tier performer, but had you overclocked an R9 290, it would match an R9 290X, which was about as fast as the Titan at the time. So clearly wrong on that point. $400 for a mid-range card, see what a 2080 Ti can do, is not good. Well, you're not going to get 2080 Ti performance for $400 anymore. That's simply not going to happen. But at the very least, I understand the point that he's trying to make. I agree that it's simply just his opinion. There's your invalidation. My arguments are based upon merit facts, which I already just disproved a bunch of them, but I'm just going to crush this dude's argument even further here in a minute. Yours were based on feelings and invalidation rejected. Anyone complaining about the price needs to learn how to budget their money and better save up for a bit longer to get the best, whether it's AMD or NVIDIA. Okay, so this guy laid out his case. Basically, just continue to save up your money until you can buy the performance that you want, regardless of how much money they want to charge you. This is somebody that certainly does not have a problem spending $1,200 on a video card. That last generation, that tier performance was only $700, and so on and so forth. But to just destroy this guy's whole dreams and fantasy in the fact that video cards are supposed to get faster each generation for the same money, not more money. More performance does not mean more money, because otherwise you would never upgrade. For example, the GTX 1060, because we're talking about the RTX 2060, this is a fair card to go with. Let's say you are a GTX 1060 6GB owner. There are many of you out there. I actually have one as well. I didn't spend the MSRP on it. I got a great deal, but even still, I have one. Many people have this card. Okay, so what's it going to take a 1060 6GB owner to upgrade? Well, first off, it launched at $249. Yes, I know it says $299 right here. Jumping over to a non-tech, that's because the Founders Edition was $299, but they actually did launch at $249 and were available at launch at $249. So we have a $249 card at launch, $299 FE, which, like I said, nobody bought the FE because it was $50 more. We go one generation back to the GTX 960, $199. Well, that's a big difference. So we went from $199 up to $249. All right. Well, what about one generation before that? Okay, so we have the 760, $249. Okay, so that's the same price as the 1070. Interestingly enough, if we go over here, this is a GK104 chip. So it was actually a bigger die than the GM206 or the GP106 used. So perhaps that's one of the reasons why this one cost a little bit more, but whatever. It's still within the same realm as the other GPUs. The GTX 660, $229, kind of splitting the difference right there. The GTX 560. This one right here, well, we're back down to $199. And then the GTX 460. And this one's coming in at $229. So we have a very clear trend of where the 60 series GPUs typically land in the price stack between $199 and $249. That means at the proposed price of $349, which, of course, we don't know this is an absolute fact, but it seems highly likely at this point, means that this is by far and away the most expensive 60 series GPU ever made. Now, the reason why people aren't going to give a shit about this, and the reason why people are upset, is let's say you are that GTX 1060 owner. Remember, you're this guy. You spent $249 on your GPU. It's still running just fine right now. It's doing real well, but you want a little bit more oomph in the tank. Okay, so you're like, okay, what's going to come out around that $249 price point? Because that's what I want to pay to play my games. Okay, it's been about 2 years since I got my card, a little bit over. And then you see this coming out at $349. This is no longer a replacement for your card. These are not the same class card anymore. Okay, so if you spent $249, that means at $349, this card invalidates the upgrade path because your card is still going to technically be worth $249 because as of right now, there's nothing else at that price point. There is no replacement for that. So you have zero reason to upgrade to this card. The GTX 1070 Ti has been at the $349-ish price point for the better part of 6 months, possibly a little bit longer, and offers similar performance with more RAM, by the way. And you did not jump on that. That was not enticing enough for you to upgrade at this particular point. So what makes people think that this card at $349 has the value to get people to upgrade? It doesn't. As I just showed you, throughout the years, starting with the GTX 460, all the way on up, there's a defined price point that this class GPU lives within. Now, the obvious differences are going to be between manufacturing process and competition from AMD, of course. That's what factors into the prices being lower or a little bit higher. But going all the way back to July 12th, 2010, and possibly even a little bit further if I really wanted to dig deeper, but I think going 8 years back, 8.5 years back, actually is enough. For about the better part of a decade, this is the way things have been done. Not more speed equals more money, because that just simply doesn't make sense. That means right here at $229, the GTX 560 should have cost, what, $300? And then the GTX 660 cost, what, $329 maybe? And then we'd be up to the 760, so maybe, what, $350, $360? And then we got the 960, so that's about $400. And then at the 1060, this should have been, $430, $450. And according to this guy's logic, that means the RTX 2060 should be about $500 at this point, because they're faster, so they're worth more money. That's not the way that this should work. And I simply don't understand why people want to go ahead and bash down consumer criticisms in the favor of supporting shady business practices. It's very clear that these are expensive GPUs to make, and NVIDIA is pushing the cost onto consumers. And realistically, once it comes down to the mainstream, you can't do that. Mainstream gamers don't give a shit. They will stick with their GTX 1060s because they're not going to spend any more money without getting a substantial performance increase. And realistically, for the exact same amount of money to entice somebody to upgrade, there will need to be a $249 GPU with a bare minimum of a 30% performance increase before the vast majority of consumers will ever consider upgrading. 30% is the bare minimum that you can get away with at the same price point. This is the reason why you don't see anybody really buying RTX 2080s or 2070s. There is no 30% performance increase over last generation's cards at similar price points. Looking at the GTX 1070 up to the 2070, you see a 31% performance increase. Now, had the 2070 launched at $399, which is basically the same price as the GTX 1070, this card, a lot of people would be applauding that. It would be just fine and people would be okay with it. But at $499, it's priced itself out of its own competition because it's not in the same realm where it needs to be. And just for you guys wondering out there, 50 to 100% performance gains are also something that we used to expect, and this happened last generation. You look at the 980 Ti up to the 1080 Ti, it was 67% faster, and $649 for the 980 Ti, $699 for the 1080 Ti. So a $50 increase, but you got a 67% performance increase. If we go back to the GTX 1060 here, and if we look at the GTX 1070 Ti, which is roughly where we're going to expect the RTX 2060 to land, it's 50% faster. And if this card, the RTX 2060, was selling at $249, that'd be a pretty fair upgrade. I don't think anybody out there would have a problem with that. I certainly wouldn't. I'd say it's actually a good value. You're getting what you paid for. That is worth the upgrade. Now, people have already voted. If you didn't upgrade from a 1060 up to a 1070 Ti, it's not worth it to you. That price to performance difference clearly is not worth it to you. And that is the reason why people say you had yesteryear's performance. Basically, any performance target that is not new, meaning the RTX 2080 Ti, that is a level of performance you could not get last generation. So that's the reason why everybody kind of lauds over that. It's like, you know what? You have no choice. This is the only card that can do that. So it is what it is. And a lot of people will just say, screw it, and they'll spend that kind of money. I'm not, but that's okay. I'm never going to spend that kind of money, and that's all right. And realistically, it is 30% faster than the 1080 Ti. So, okay, they hit the bare minimum. Realistically, that card should also be $699. I mean, according to Techpowerup, it's only 24%, so it's not even hitting the minimum threshold that I would say would be worth an upgrade from a 1080 Ti, even at the exact same price. But at the very least, you can't do anything with that. Now, the 1080 Ti, you had that performance last generation, and it's basically on par with the 2080. Now, of course, they're using the Founders Edition parts here versus the Founders Edition, which you have overclocked versus stock. Once you have overclocked versus overclocked, it's null. It's nil right there. They're basically the same, just like the 1080 and the 2070. They're basically the same. And the performance levels there, we had them last generation, and they're trying to get the same amount of money for these, and that's the real issue. And I don't understand why people will openly condemn consumer criticism for their own biased, I guess, buying decisions or to justify their own buying decisions. Realistically, you got ripped off. You got ripped off, bro. I just proved it to you. And there's really nothing you can say about that. There's all your facts. The 60 series GPUs have been $200 to $250 for 8 years. And now NVIDIA says, nah, we want another $100. And you say, oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Even though the performance gain is on par with what we've seen in the past, there's nothing new there. You do get RTX, I guess that's new, but nobody cares. You get DLSS, which, once again, nothing uses it, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's pretty worthless, honestly. Yeah, it might be cool in the future, and then at that point, if they want to start charging a premium for it, they might be able to. But right now, it's worthless technology. This would be like AMD charging you extra for Radeon Chill. Hey, this card has chill, so we're going to charge you more money. You know, it's not worth it, and nobody's going to do that. So that's basically where RTX and DLSS really sit in the consumer's minds at this point. And something like an RTX 2060 is not going to be doing ray tracing anyway, since the 2070 can barely scrape by. Well, alrighty, guys, this kind of came off a little bit more ranty than I wanted to. Once again, don't harass anybody on this. They're entitled to their own opinion. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why you want to defend companies that are solely out there to take as much money from you as possible and everybody else around you. And when somebody out there disagrees with you, their argument is invalidated. Meanwhile, I just invalidated this guy's argument. But please try to explain this to me down in the comment section below. Be nice about it. Don't be a jerk and be like, oh, they're Nvidiots or whatever. I hate that stuff. Be intelligent. Prove things. Do what I do. You know, speak about things clearly and intelligently. There's no reason to resort to name calling, because then you're no better than these people that really don't have a clue. I just simply don't understand this mindset where, hey, we need to defend this company. I mean, I've done it before for like AMD on products that I felt were good. I've even said that you should spend a little bit more on AMD products because I'm being selfish there. Because by supporting competition in the market, NVIDIA can't have free reign over the market, and then prices don't get as stupid as they are now. So I have said that before, but I wasn't shilling for a company to price gouge. I have actually spoken out openly against AMD when they overpriced their Vega GPUs because they just couldn't compete. Now, it really wasn't their fault because HBM was a lot more expensive, but at the same time, they couldn't compete, and I didn't recommend them. So the only time I will go ahead and do anything like that is when the competition is good, price to performance is good, and even if it's a few dollars extra, and I feel like, hey, it's better to support the competition because in the long term, it's going to keep prices down, going to keep the market healthy. Sometimes it's worth an extra $10 or so to go ahead and do that. Plus, typically you get the better features from AMD like FreeSync, Radeon Chill. They don't charge extra for that, by the way, which is really nice. I think NVIDIA probably would. You know, so there's a lot of big benefits to their ecosystem. NVIDIA does have their big benefits as well. You know, they do have the lower power consumption GPUs and everything, which is good if you're building a small profile system or a fanless system. You know, both manufacturers have their ups and their downs and their pluses and their minuses. Both are good, but obviously the pricing of the RTX series is not good. I just showed you guys how off it is. Basically, the performance that we're getting needs to be about $100 less, if not more, across the board. And then it would be more competitive, and I think people would be interested. But alrighty, guys, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Sorry this came off a little bit ranty. I'll go ahead and start working on that next video. That should be up in the next week or two. That's going to be more interesting, talking about basically AAA games and the fact that realistically most of us don't need to ever buy games again, and that's really the danger to these guys. If they're not delivering the best possible games in the world, I think that these guys are really in some serious trouble. But that's what I'm going to talk about in the next video. If you like this video, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share with friends. That really helps me out. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. Have a happy new year, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.